You know what's strange? Some of the most intelligent, emotionally aware people you will ever meet are also some of the most exhausted. And it's not because they're doing too much. It's because they're thinking too much. They replay conversations that ended 3 hours ago. They map out disastrous scenarios that have a 0.01% chance of ever happening. They lie awake at 2 a.m., not because something actually went wrong, but because their brain refuses to stop asking, what if? And here is the psychological paradox at the heart of this. The very cognitive habit that makes someone thoughtful, careful, and empathetic is the exact same habit that is quietly, methodically, draining them. Perhaps you recognize this pattern in yourself. You finish a conversation and immediately begin replaying it, frame by frame, analyzing tone, word choice, pauses. You think, did I say the wrong thing? Did they notice? What did they really mean when they said that? Or maybe you're lying in bed right now, mentally rehearsing a meeting that's 3 days away, scripting responses to questions that may never be asked, preparing for conflicts that exist only in your imagination. If this sounds familiar, I want you to understand something crucial. You are not broken. You are not weak. And you are certainly not alone. Today, we are going to explore the psychology of the always online mind, why it develops, what it's actually doing to your brain, and most importantly, what it reveals about who you really are. Because the truth is, overthinking isn't a flaw in your character. It's a feature of your nervous system, one that was designed to protect you, but has now become the very thing holding you captive. First, let's get clear on what's actually happening inside your brain when you overthink. Psychologists call this pattern maladaptive rumination. It's a tendency to circle back to the same thought loops, especially around uncertainty, past mistakes, or social situations. Now, if you struggle with this, you might think, I'm just broken. I'm too anxious. I'm not like other people. But studies from Yale University and the University of Michigan show us something entirely different. People who ruminate aren't doing so because they're weak. In many cases, they're doing it because their brain is exceptionally good at pattern recognition. Let me explain. Your brain is a high-performance system. It is always scanning, always processing, always looking for meaning in the noise. Think of it like this. You have a state-of-the-art security system installed in your mind. Its job is to detect threats, analyze patterns, and keep you safe. The problem isn't the quality of your intelligence. The problem is that the system never receives the signal to stop. Neurologically, this involves several key players in your brain. First, there's the prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain, responsible for planning, decision-making, and analysis. In overthinkers, this CEO stays active, even during downtime. Even when you're supposed to be relaxing, watching a movie, or falling asleep, your prefrontal cortex is still running meetings, still drafting reports, still solving problems that don't exist yet. Meanwhile, your default mode network, your brain's background processing system, keeps generating internal monologue. This is the voice in your head, the narrator of your life. In a healthy brain, the default mode network activates during rest, helping you process memories, plan for the future, and understand yourself. But in the overthinker's brain, this network doesn't rest. It obsesses. It catastrophizes. It replays. The result? Your mind is essentially always online, always auditing, always drafting responses to conversations that haven't happened yet. Imagine trying to use a computer with 300 browser tabs open simultaneously, every application running, every program demanding attention. That's your brain on chronic overthinking. And here's what most people don't realize. This isn't just mentally exhausting. It has real, measurable, physical consequences. Research published in the journal Biological Psychiatry found that chronic rumination increases cortisol levels, the stress hormone that, when elevated for long periods, suppresses your immune system, disrupts your sleep, and even shrinks the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for memory. In other words, overthinking doesn't just make you tired. It literally changes the structure of your brain. But here's the part that might surprise you. This same cognitive pattern, when directed properly, is also what makes exceptional therapists, brilliant strategists, and deeply empathetic friends. The ability to analyze, to anticipate, to consider multiple perspectives. These are strengths. The question isn't whether you should stop thinking deeply. The question is, How do you prevent that strength from becoming your prison? But where did this habit start? For a large number of overthinkers, it didn't begin in adulthood. It began in childhood. Often, it starts in environments where the outcomes felt unpredictable. If you grew up in a household where mood shifted without warning, where love felt conditional, or where mistakes carried consequences that felt disproportionate, your young brain learned a very logical, very necessary survival strategy: anticipate everything. Think about it. If you're a child, and you can't predict whether coming home will mean warmth or criticism, safety or conflict, your brain does what any intelligent system would do. It starts collecting data. You learn to read facial expressions with microscopic precision. You become an expert in tone of voice. You develop an almost supernatural ability to sense tension before it even surfaces. You learn that if you can predict what's coming, you can protect yourself. Maybe you learn to stay quiet. Maybe you learn to be perfect. Maybe you learn to manage everyone else's emotions so that yours would finally be safe. And it worked. For a while, at least, this strategy kept you safe. It made you valuable. It made you the responsible one, the mature one, the one people could count on. But here's the cost. You never learned that it was safe to stop scanning. You never received the message that said, "You can rest now. The danger has passed. You are safe." Overthinking, in that light, isn't a personality flaw. It's an adaptation. It's a very smart, very protective nervous system, doing exactly what it was trained to do. The tragedy is that you are now an adult, living in a different environment, surrounded by different people, with different levels of safety, but your brain is still operating on the emergency survival protocols from 10 or 20 years ago. Psychologists call this a threat detection error. Your brain's alarm system, which was calibrated in childhood to respond to real danger, is now sounding alarms for things that aren't actually dangerous. A delayed text message, a misunderstood comment, a meeting that went slightly differently than you planned. These aren't threats, but your nervous system, still stuck in that old environment, treats them like they are. And so you think, and think, and think, not because you're broken, but because you're still trying to solve a problem that no longer exists. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the world's leading trauma researchers, writes in his book The Body Keeps the Score that traumatic stress isn't just stored in our thoughts. It's stored in our body, in our nervous system, in the way we hold tension in our shoulders, clench our jaw, or breathe. And for many overthinkers, the loop isn't just mental. It's physiological. Your body is still braced for impact, even when there's nothing coming. Now, here's where it gets even more complex. Over time, many overthinkers don't just have this pattern. They become this pattern. It starts to feel like identity. You might say things like, "I'm just an anxious person. I've always been this way. This is just who I am." And when a behavior becomes identity, it becomes incredibly difficult to change, because now, you're not just changing a habit. You're threatening your sense of self. Psychologically, this is called enmeshment with the symptom. You've lived with this pattern for so long that you can't imagine who you would be without it. Who am I if I'm not the person who thinks of everything? Who plans for every disaster? Who anticipates every problem before it happens? If I stop overthinking, will I become careless? Irresponsible? Will I lose the very thing that makes me, me? Here's the truth. Your value does not come from your vigilance. You are not useful because you suffer. You are not valuable because you carry the weight of every possible outcome. You are allowed to be thoughtful without being tortured. You are allowed to be responsible without being exhausted. And you are allowed to rest without earning it first. One of the most radical acts of healing is learning to separate who you are from what you do to survive. Overthinking is not your identity. It's a strategy. And strategies can be updated. Let's talk about what overthinking is really trying to do. At its core, overthinking is an attempt to control the uncontrollable. If I think about this enough, if I plan for every possibility, if I mentally rehearse every scenario, then nothing bad will happen. But here's the psychological trap. The more you try to control your thoughts, the more powerful they become. This is called the ironic process theory, discovered by psychologist Daniel Wegner. He found that when you try not to think about something, your brain actually increases its focus on that exact thing. The classic example: try right now not to think about a white bear. What just happened? You thought about a white bear. Your brain doesn't process negatives well. When you say, "Don't think about that embarrassing thing you said," your brain hears, "Think about that embarrassing thing you said." And so, the very act of trying to suppress the thought strengthens it. This is why distraction doesn't work. This is why trying to force yourself to stop thinking backfires. Because you're still engaging with the thought. You're still giving it energy, attention, significance. The overthinker's dilemma is this: you're trying to solve a problem that thinking cannot solve. You cannot think your way into not thinking. But here is the quiet truth psychology keeps circling back to. The mind cannot think its way out of every problem. Some things have to be felt, decided, or, and this is the hardest part, simply released, not solved. If you're caught in this loop, don't try to stop the thoughts. Instead, change your relationship to them. This is called cognitive diffusion, a technique from acceptance and commitment therapy. When a thought loop starts, instead of saying, "This situation is dangerous and I need to figure it out," try the reframe, "My brain is generating a concern right now." Do you feel the difference? One pulls you in. The other gives you a fraction of distance. You're not dismissing the thought. You're not pretending it doesn't exist. You're simply observing it, the way you'd observe a cloud passing in the sky. It's there. You see it. But you don't have to climb inside it. Another powerful reframe. You are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are events in your mind. They come, they go. Some are useful. Some are not. But you, the awareness that observes those thoughts, you are separate. You are the sky. Your thoughts are the weather. And weather always changes. Dr. Stephen Hayes, the founder of acceptance and commitment therapy, uses this metaphor. Imagine you're on a bus. Your thoughts are passengers. Some passengers are loud. Some are rude. Some are catastrophizing about the route. The overthinker's mistake is getting off the driver's seat, walking to the back of the bus, and arguing with the passengers. Should we turn left? What if we crash? What if we are late? But here's the truth. You don't have to argue with the passengers. You don't have to convince them they're wrong. You don't even have to make them be quiet. You just have to stay in the driver's seat and keep the bus moving toward where you want to go. Your thoughts can scream. They can panic. They can catastrophize. And you can still drive. So what does this look like, practically? Here are 3 tools, backed by psychology, that can help. Tool number 1, the worry window. Set aside 10 minutes a day, same time, same place. This is your designated time to worry. When an anxious thought appears outside that window, acknowledge it. I see you. I'll think about you at 4 p.m. Then, gently redirect. What this does is train your brain that worrying has a time and place. It's not banned. It's scheduled. And research shows that over time, your brain starts to release its grip because it knows it will get its turn. Tool number 2, the 5 senses reset. When you notice you're spiraling, pause. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. This isn't distraction. This is re-regulation. You're bringing your nervous system back into the present moment, where there is no disaster, only what is. Tool number 3, the thought record. Write down the thought that's looping. Then ask, what evidence do I have that this is true? What evidence do I have that this might not be true? This isn't about being positive. It's about being accurate. Often, when we see the thought on paper, we realize it's not a fact. It's a fear, dressed up as a prediction. These tools won't fix everything overnight, but they create space. And in that space, healing begins. Here's the truth no one tells overthinkers. Your overthinking is also a symptom of deep care. You think this much because you care this much. You care about doing the right thing. You care about not hurting people. You care about being prepared, being responsible, being good. And that is not a weakness. That is a profound, beautiful, exhausting strength. The goal isn't to stop caring. The goal is to learn that you can care deeply without carrying everything. You can be thoughtful without being tortured. You can be responsible without being a prisoner to your own mind. Overthinking is not evidence of instability. It is evidence of a highly active mind that learned to stay alert in a world that once felt uncertain. Your goal, starting today, isn't to kill that mind. It's to teach it, gently, with patience, that it is finally safe enough to rest. Because understanding your pattern doesn't erase it, but it does change how much power it has over you. And sometimes, that tiny shift in power is exactly where the healing begins. If you've made it this far, I want you to know something. You are not too much. You are not broken. And your mind, for all its noise, is also capable of profound insight, creativity, and connection. The same brain that keeps you up at night is the brain that notices beauty others miss. That feels deeply. That cares intensely. Don't abandon that part of yourself. Just teach it that it doesn't have to work so hard anymore. You've survived everything up until this point. And you will survive what comes next, not because you've thought of every outcome, but because you are more resilient than your mind gives you credit for. So tonight, when the thoughts come, try something different. Don't fight them. Don't fix them. Just notice them. And then, gently, kindly, return to your breath. You are safe. You are enough. And you are allowed, finally, to rest. I am Falco, and we just getting started.